4. We got Travis Schiller in the house today, roofer in Denver, Colorado, and the whole Colorado, I should say metro area. What's up, man?
Not much. Just enjoying a kind of chilly, rainy day. Not on a lot of roofs today.
Not a lot of roofs today? That's good. You don't want to be climbing on roofs when it's too cold or slippery, I suppose. Yeah. Hey, man, thanks for taking the time to just, talk a little bit today about roofs in general. A roof is obviously a critical part of a home. And not only is it a critical part of the home, it's one of like the big 7: roof, sewer line, HVAC, foundation, plumbing, electrical, radon, that buyers and sellers really do a lot of negotiating on. So we're excited to chat with you about, a day in the life of a roofer and learn more about what we should look out for and just kind of roofing intel in general. Why don't you just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. Yeah. As you mentioned, Travis Schiller. I've been in the roofing industry about 3 years now, and learn more every single day. Like you mentioned, roofing, you guys is the big 7 for part of you. For me, it's just the big one.
Yeah. Right.
And there's so much to learn, residential side, commercial side, depending on where you're at. And, most homeowners, me being a newer homeowner myself, when I first got in the roofing industry, I had just become a homeowner. And that was kind of part of the way that I ended up in the industry. Was I had a problem with my own roof, and coincidentally was interviewing with a roofing company, and then got a leak the day that they offered me a job. So kind of just
on your own house.
Yeah, absolutely. I had already had a leak that we had kind of fixed for a short period of time, and then it was dormant for 3 or 4 months. And then the day that it came back was the day that they were kind of extending a job offer to me. Seemed like a good omen, good reason to get in the industry. And I'm glad that I did. I really enjoy the industry. Get to spend a lot of time outside, great views up on top of roofs here in Colorado, 300 days of sunshine and blue sky.
Totally.
So, I mean, I really enjoy it. I get to help people, and there's a lot of jobs that I've had, this being another one where you kind of get a lot of people have a negative connotation about roofing or roofers or roofing salespeople. And so I try to kind of, change people's viewpoint on us and industry a little bit, try to do things the right way. And, I really enjoy helping people. So it's a really good fit for a job. And I love it.
I can say firsthand, you have helped several clients of now ours on both the buy side and the sell side. There has been, in my experience, most roofs are replaced in Colorado from hail damage, and we're going to get well into that topic. But you've really come through in big ways, and we've been in time crunches. Sometimes the title company wants a roof to be completed before closing. Other times they don't mind if it exceeds the closing date, and we can escrow funds back. But you've come through and delivered an incredible level of service and knowledge and explanation to myself and my clients. So thank you for that, first of all. And you're certainly doing the good work of the roofer. You're doing good by the roofing industry by providing really quality service. So thanks. What?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you're good. No, I just wanted to hear what you're kind of where do you think we should begin? I mean, should we start talking about hail in Colorado, insurance premiums, wherever you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, kind of one thing that, I mean, obviously you have a crowd, a lot of people in the real estate world. And I mean, that was how you and I first connected, was I was drawn to you and your knowledge of, the real estate market. I bought a house, didn't know a ton about the market, never have been in the real estate world, didn't have a job like this where I was working with realtors. So it was nice, to kind of connect with you early on, somebody who I felt confident in asking those questions and understanding the real estate process. Cause just like a lot of realtors don't understand the roofing process or the insurance process. There's a lot of roofers who don't understand what all goes into the real estate process.
Sure.
So it's nice to have insight and somebody who can knows the ins and outs of that.
Sure.
It makes it easier for me to help other realtors when I get them who approach me. And, lots of times, like you said, with realtors, there's time constraints. So I would just recommend to anybody, whether it's a realtor, whether it's a homeowner, whether it's a potential, first time homeowner, having a roofer that and trust is a really important thing, because I
Sure.
didn't when I first started. Um, Luckily, like I said, ended up working for a roofing company that did a great job on my roof. But if I wasn't in that boat, I would have been, reaching out to my realtor, reaching out to my insurance agent, reaching out to somebody to try and figure it out. And roofing can be a up and down market where sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's super, super busy. And so, if you need to act fast, whether it's from a leak, from
Sure.
or if it's a real estate transaction, it's nice to have somebody in your pocket that you have a relationship with and that you trust.
Yeah.
And it's construction. Anybody who's ever dealt with construction realizes that nothing goes as planned, and it doesn't always go perfect. And having somebody that you trust is going to take care of your clients or you or whoever at the end of the day, is really what's important. We do a
Yep.
really good job and try not to drop the ball too many times, but every now and then there's things that don't go as planned and a customer is, upset, and having a salesperson or, a project manager or somebody that you trust is going to be able to handle things and take care of you. At the end of the day, a real big tool that we keep in our tool bag is, hey, we're going to make it right. We'll take care of you. So, I think just having a roofer that you can trust and that you have a relationship with, even if it's just surface level, it's something to have as a homeowner, that when that day comes, it's just nice to have somebody.
Yeah. I would say that you are probably the vendor that I reach out to the most in terms of, hey, I need some advice. We have a situation here. So let's talk through that. So for example, I grew up in California and I never lived through a re-roof.
Right.
No, actually, I take that back. When I was in high school, we did do a part of a roof replacement on my parents' home in the Central Valley of California. But in Colorado, I have dealt with probably 5 roofs just in this year, 2023. So, and we all know, those of us in Colorado know that we have pretty extreme hail roll through seasonally, and that causes some catastrophic damage on roofs. So that's when I call you most often. Whether representing a buyer or a seller, we will probably do a pre roof inspection on a seller, or during the inspection we discover some obvious hail damage, but then I have you come out and set eyes on it. So what is it you're looking for to determine, hey, this roof is replaceable or not?
Sure. Yeah. In terms of insurance and when it's replaceable, it will depend on who your insurance company is. Every company kind of has their own threshold of damage for what they would call a totaled roof. I won't name names, insurance companies, but do your research. Having a good roofer, having a good insurance broker or an insurance agent is huge as a homeowner as well. But in terms of your roof, that's a big deal in terms of your homeowner's insurance. And as you know, when you put a nice new roof on there, especially if you go with like a class 4 roof, which is a hail resistant shingle, here in our marketplace, there's insurance companies that will give you 20, 30 plus percentage discounts on your premiums monthly or annually.
Yeah.
And they call your house a roof over your head for a reason. It's a big, important part of the house. So having good insurance matters, because you could be stuck with a certain company that expects a really high threshold. For example, in roofing, we use a measurement that's called a square, just 10 feet by 10 feet, 100 square feet.
Yep.
So like if you did get hit with hail, that's one thing I'm going to go look for on your roof is I'm going to find a square kind of out on a roof slope, whether I draw it physically with some chalk or just kind of map it out in my head, and then look for hail damage inside of that square. Hail damage is 80% of roofs in the country are asphalt shingles, which is essentially like a fiberglass mat backing with asphalt granules adhered on the top of it. When hail hits that, it can knock those granules off, kind of exposing the fiberglass mat. In Colorado, with the elevation that we have, once that fiberglass is exposed, it just kind of rapidly starts to age and deteriorate. And so that's why your insurance company replaces it. It's not like you immediately start to have leaks or anything like that.
Right.
When you get hit by hail. I mean, you can if it hits a flashing or hits a certain area, But for the
Right.
most part, you have some time after a hailstorm before you start experiencing leaks or other sort of, internal issues. Um,
Sure.
but with that being said, each insurance company has a different threshold of how much damage they want to see inside of a square before they say it's totaled. You've got
Hmm.
companies that, if you have 5 to 6 hits per square, that's totaled, that roof slope, and so a lot of times they'll go to the front, the back, the sides, and draw squares on all of those slopes. You've got other companies that want to have 12 to 13 hail strikes in a square, which is almost 3 times as much as that, some of the other ones. So on average, you're probably looking about 8 to 10 hail
Hmm.
strikes is what most insurance companies are looking for. And so, that can play a big role in whether or not,
Hmm.
you should make a claim or not, depending who your insurance company is and how much
Right.
damage they expect.
Right.
So that's one thing, it's the first question I ask when I'm looking for hail damage is who's your insurance, so I can know when I'm up there how much damage you need to kind of
Sure.
meet that. Um,
Now, is there a scenario where there would be a partial roof replacement versus a full roof replacement?
there is, ideally, no, you don't want to go that route. Colorado, some states have like a uniformity type of law or
Hmm.
requirement, which essentially means that everything needs to be able to match. So,
Sure.
people will be like, well, I can get the same shingles that I have up there. Those are still available. Well, that's great. But if they're 2, 3, 10 years old, they're
Yep.
going to have UV damage and sun fading. So it's
Yeah.
not going to be exactly the same as
Right.
the other ones. There's also some codes out there, and insurance companies, roofers, different people in the industry will kind of argue it a little bit differently. But there's some codes that essentially say you can't reuse any materials on a roof.
Hmm.
And how shingles work is they kind of blend into each other and
Yep.
nails go through, both of those shingles. So if you're removing one shingle and pulling that nail out of it, well, now technically the other shingle that it was attached to is used, shouldn't be reusing it. But with that being said, we do repairs.
Yeah.
We've done single slopes on a roof.
Hmm.
2 years ago, down in like Southlands, Aurora area, they got hit by a storm that wasn't big hail, but there was a lot of really heavy wind along with it. So it was just throwing this hail at the certain roof slopes really hard. The other side of those same roofs were barely touched.
Right.
And for the most part, if you have good insurance, if you have 2 slopes or 3 slopes that are damaged, they're going to replace the whole thing. Some cities will have their own code requirements that will require that will say, hey, once you surpass 50%, you have to replace all of it. Or some cities have even what's called a 1 square rule, like Longmont, for example, a little bit further north. I know there's a couple municipalities in Denver Metro, but Longmont's one that's had it for a while. So I presume that the people that live in Longmont pay higher insurance premiums because of this building code they have. But in Longmont, they have 1 square on the roof that is damaged and needs to be replaced. The whole roof needs to be replaced is what
Wow.
Longmont codes require. So, that means if I was going to replace something under a square, less than 100 square feet, I don't need a permit. We can go out and make the repair, no questions asked.
Yep.
As soon as we exceed 100 square feet, we would need to get a permit. And if it exceeds 100 square feet in Longmont, that permit would be for a full roof replacement because you can't
Right.
get a repair permit for that size. So
Yeah.
there's weird nuances like
Yeah.
that. It
Sounds like it.
rabbit holes in so many different things. City to city, county to county, the
Right.
codes change. What's required in Denver isn't the same as what's required in Fort Collins and
Sure.
and in other areas and so on.
Yeah. So I have two follow-up questions here, and we could take this however you'd like. Number one would be the lifetime or the lifespan of a roof or a shingle and what that typically is. And I want to touch on the permitting process at some point. So whichever one of those you want to take first, I'd like to kind of go down either one of those routes.
Yeah, let's start with the first one. Lifespan. I mean, most asphalt shingle manufacturers nowadays are giving what are called limited lifetime warranties.
Sure.
They used to be 20-year shingles, 30-year shingles is kind of how people referred to them. And there's a tool called a shingle gauge, and it's just kind of tapers off, and you put it in, it'll tell you how thick that shingle is. And essentially if it's a 20-year, 30-year, whatever it is. So I would say that a good lifespan for a standard asphalt shingle roof is 30 years. In most climates, in most places.
Which is what the manufacturer says, right?
Yeah, they'll warranty it up, 50 plus lots of the times. Because to be honest, with with a basic manufacturer's warranty, you're getting coverage on the material. It's not like a workmanship warranty on the people who installed it or anything like that. And most of the time, if you have a workmanship issue, if you have a manufacturing defect issue, it's going to be visible within the first 2 years.
Got it.
So, I mean, them warrantying it for 30 years versus warrantying it for lifetime, if you got something that's 40 years old, it's hard to argue that it was a manufacturing defect that caused
right.
that
Of course,
years
of course.
to have an issue. So, I mean, those warranties, they say, lifetime on the shingles, but Colorado Front Range is arguably one of the harshest roof climates in the whole world. We get a ton of elements. We have the UV, which is huge, just being at mile high elevation. And, some people would think, well, that doesn't make sense. There's other places around the world that are higher in elevation. Well, true, but they don't necessarily get the same snow that we do. They don't necessarily get the same freeze thaw that we do. You live here, it could be 20 degrees one day and 75 the next. And we've all experienced that.
Temperature whiplash.
Right. Versus you go up to Breckenridge or you go up to some of these other areas, you don't really get that. It gets cold and it stays cold, which a roof can handle that. But expansion, contraction, things like that can really put a lot of wear and tear on a roof. And so we get a lot of that. We get snow, we get rain, we get a lot of hail. We get the UV at the elevation. There's a ton of stuff, and it's really dry here, so that can make materials become brittle and, kind of age them as well. So there's a lot of factors that go into it.
So what's the average roof age in Colorado?
There's a stat that I use a lot. I don't remember where I heard it, where I got it from, but it might just be from insurance agents that I've grown to know and worked with. But they say the average roof in Colorado is between 4 and 8 years old. So that's not typical. And that's because
quite a ways off from that manufacturer's recommended lifespan.
Right. Exactly. And so, that's asphalt shingles. They take a beating, hail's going to beat them up. UV is going to beat them up. Snow, rain, freeze thaw, all that. There's other materials out there. Metal's a great option, and there's different types of metal roofs. Sometimes when you go with a metal roof, your insurance policy might change in the sense that you might have what's called a cosmetic exclusion. So that might mean, hey, your roof might get dusted with hail, but as long as it doesn't penetrate the roof, your roof is still going to operate as it should. It will just, have a bunch of dents in it. And so that essentially what's called a cosmetic exclusion on your insurance policy means you still have coverage, but not cosmetic coverage. If your roof is still functioning as it should, there's nothing claimable.
Makes sense.
It's punctured and it's some crazy, baseball, softball hail that comes through and just demolishes stuff. Then yes, you're covered in that sense. But there's, I've talked to you about, there's some customers I'm working with who are potentially interested in switching to a metal roof. One that I really like, a good company. They're called Westlake, big company that has brought up multiple roofing companies. A company used to be called Boral. They make tile, which tile is, you've probably seen that on a lot of roofs in Highlands Ranch, Lone Tree, different places. It's a good roof. It's not my favorite for the Colorado climate. But Westlake, they also own a company that does what's called stone coated steel. And those are some of my favorite roofs in terms of, for our climate, for Colorado. The durability, they have what's called a VSH, very severe hail rating. And that hasn't come into the residential marketplace yet where it matters in terms of insurance discounts. You'll still get.
I've never heard that term. That's an interesting rating. Was that created especially for us?
It's more on the commercial side. Because those, commercial buildings, there's a lot more money involved. They have to be built, to withstand a little bit better than maybe a residential property does.
Right. And with very severe hail comes very severe insurance premium costs.
Right.
As well.
So, I'm hopeful that someday insurance in Colorado will switch over to giving you an even bigger discount if you have a product with that rating. But their stone coated steel, as far as I know, is the only product in the residential marketplace that has that rating.
Now, is that roof material? I would imagine it to be quite a bit heavier, obviously, than a shingle.
No, it's actually
So
fairly light. It's just
interesting.
super durable. It's steel, and it's kind of got like multiple layers. So like in terms of probably like per square foot, it's shingles are pretty darn heavy. I don't know if you ever lifted a bundle of shingles.
They are heavy. I just would assume that steel would be heavier, but I guess they've
No, it's in terms
created
of
a great
like
product.
square footage, like their panels are, probably 3 or 4 foot wide by maybe 14, 18 inches tall.
Yep.
And one panel is, I don't know, probably a couple pounds, And,
So I see a lot of newer homes with these metal roofs, especially in we see these farmhouse style homes being built up. Handful of builders around town. It's just very popular right now, but it's unusual to see a metal roof on an old brick house, like mine that was built in 1949. Have you had some roofs replaced, shingles to these new metal roofs on these more historic homes in the Colorado area?
no, I mean, not a ton. I mean, the tough part is roofing is every day it's more expensive.
Yeah,
And asphalt shingles are on 80% of homes because they're the most economically,
sure,
available option.
sure.
So it's tough with how much we've seen pricing go up over the years. Even just in the short amount of time that I've been in the industry, it's gone up ridiculous amounts. And we've all been alive long enough to see gas prices go up and go back down. I mean, right now they're down relative to where they were, not too long ago. And a lot of shingles, a lot of roofing materials are petroleum-based products. So you would kind of think it might go on that same path, but we never see it come down, whether it's corporate greed, like some people argue of manufacturers. Yeah, it's kind of weird when you have multiple manufacturers that aren't associated with each other announce that they're going to have price increases on the exact same day as other manufacturers,
Where's that lawsuit for price fixing?
There's definitely some roofers and some people on social media that have been critical of it. And I really enjoy watching their videos because, for me, yeah, sure. Everything that I make, if the price goes up, I make more money, which is nice, but it gets to a point where we're going to start having, we already almost priced that everyday homeowner out of being able to afford a roof. And
are we still talking about roofs or are we talking about houses? Because it sounds very similar.
Exactly. And so, houses are already expensive. Roofs are extremely expensive, but we don't see prices going down. Our suppliers are constantly raising prices because they're getting price increases passed to them by the manufacturers.
Sure.
So it's tough to get people to switch to a higher end product because the cheap option is already not cheap, and
not to mention insurance is willing to replace the existing product. They're not going to pay for you to upgrade.
Correct.
In terms of their claim amount.
Insurance will pay like for like. So they're going to replace what you have. So if you have a standard grade shingle, they'll pay for that. If you have a class 4 hail resistant shingle, they'll pay for that.
I have been surprised by how actually cheap it is to have, like, for example, I've represented a buyer in a situation where the roof needed to be replaced, and the buyer had asked, "Hey, let's get class 4 impact resistant shingle put on," and the delta in price between the non-class 4 and the impact resistant class 4 was almost negligible, and the buyer just footed the difference in the bill to have that upgraded shingle, which is a huge win because now they get the insurance premium discount.
Absolutely. That's one thing I try. I work mostly off referral business. There's a lot of roofing companies where 95% of their business comes from chasing storms and knocking on doors in neighborhoods and knocking 4+ days a week, trying to let people look at their roofs and see if they have damage, which isn't always horrible. A lot of people see those people as bad guys. But realistically, like I told you in the past, if somebody's knocking on your door, they're not just picking random houses. They're there for a reason. You were probably hit by some sort of a storm, which generates, those people kind of popping up in your area. So with that said, insurance companies are always going to, especially in Colorado, with how much hail we get, they're going to always be kind of changing, trying to protect themselves. They're businesses that want to remain profitable.
Sure.
I had thrown a stat to you one time. I work with a lot of insurance agents. There was one who does a ton of business, and she had told me at one point that for the last X amount of years, for every $100 in premiums that they were bringing in as a company, they were forking out $140 in claims.
Wow.
which is
Yeah.
not sustainable at all.
No.
Obviously, insurance companies, pay attention to those things and where they're profitable and where they're not, because there's other states where it's
And they're
going to
pulling out.
be,
Yeah.
yeah,
They're saying we're just done here. We can't afford to pay the premiums in Colorado anymore.
right, exactly. And so we've
Pay
seen,
out. Yeah.
some crazy things happen from the Marshall fire, with 1,000+ homes that were total losses,
It's torched in a day. It was unbelievable.
unexpected things like that happening, and then kind of the repercussions afterwards of people being underinsured, and a lot of lawsuits, things going around trying to figure out, is it insurance companies that are underinsuring people, is it homeowners that are being cheap and wanting to pay less, and and granted, I say cheap, like insurance in Colorado is ridiculously expensive, but at the same time, like, you need to know what you're paying for and what you're not,
Right.
what you're covered for and what you're not.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if they send you something in the mail that says, hey, we're going to drop your premium by $20 if you sign off on this, well, you should know what you're signing off on, because if it says that you're going to switch to a 1% deductible, well, if your house is insured for $600,000, now your deductible just went up to $6,000 next time you need to replace your roof, which is still better than paying for a full roof, right? But $6,000 is a lot more than $500 or $1,500, which a lot of deductibles have been at, kind of historically.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a huge dent in the savings, assuming that they have that in the savings even to begin with, right? Yeah, really interesting there. Hey, what about when a scenario for, say, a storm rolls through and I don't know if I have any damage. I haven't been on my roof. Maybe I'm an elderly person and I don't see any roof leaks. Everything's fine. Are there any risks associated with not calling a roofer or getting it checked out?
Yeah, it's a really good question. One thing that I always tell people is that with all the claims that we have in the state, your insurance claim history is becoming more and more like a credit score. So you don't want to just make claims because you're like, oh, hail hit us last night. It's probably calling a claim. There's, as we kind of talked about earlier, there's certain things that insurance companies are going to look for. There's certain thresholds of damage, that they're going to want to see to be able to cover something. So if you make a claim and you don't have enough damage and they just deny it, that's a zero claim. You don't get paid anything, but it's still a claim against your record. And
you're seen as the type of person that tries to make a claim for something small, therefore you're higher risk to the insurance company.
Yep. Yeah, that's kind of a good way to explain it. I tell people all the time, I ask them what their claim history is. How long have you lived here? Have you ever made a claim? Do you have any other properties that you've made claims on? Those types of things, because that all can matter. And not only in the sense that, whether they should or shouldn't make a claim, but sometimes it's not cut and dry. It's, hey, you've got damage, but it's hard to say if your insurance company will cover all of this. And if you've got a super clean claim history, and you need a new roof anyways, and it's like, yeah, then you probably can try to make a claim and hope for the best. If there's stuff that's obviously old damage, things like that, or if they just simply don't have enough damage, then I just tell them, make a claim, call me within the next 12 months and have me look at it again. It's charged for inspections. Most people, even if they do get up on the roof, they don't know what they are looking for,
Right.
Like
unless it's blatantly obvious.
Absolutely.
Right.
There's times, I remember you sent me a roof and we maybe FaceTimed and I told you over the video, like, yeah, it's blasted.
Yeah. Hey, here's this grainy video. And you're like, oh, that thing's totaled. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And those are great. I love when I get on those because there's no ambiguity there. It's, hey, yep, let's make a claim. You're getting a roof for a deductible, which is about the best.
Yes. Yes. But what if, and here's the crazy, and you're the one who actually, you educated me a lot on this. Let's say the hail that caused all that damage was over the course of the last, say, 5 or more years. And then every insurance company has a different, date of damage. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, let's say I get on the roof of, during an inspection with my inspector and we notice it. We tell the seller, hey, we're asking for a new roof. They get denied because of the time frame. What's that about?
Yeah. So, insurance has to have what's called sudden and drastic loss. The sudden means they need to be able to tie it to a specific date.
Mm-hmm.
So I have access to software where I could punch in an address and look to see whether they were hit by a major wind event, a
Mm-hmm.
major hail event, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I can click on those events and it'll overlay on the map, kind of showing me where the hail hit, how big it hit in certain areas. And those things
Mm-hmm.
aren't 100% accurate. There's times where people are outside of what the map shows and they still got hit, and they show me videos, from them standing in the
Mm-hmm.
garage watching it come down.
Yeah, so that way you don't have people going up there with their 4-iron slamming on their roof and saying, "Hey, look at this hail
Absolutely.
damage."
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it happens. There's certain parts of the country, like for some reason, Chicago, they have a lot of fraud out in Chicago based on what insurance adjusters have told me.
I mean, a payout for a roof is
Yeah, and the
significant
thing is,
because the
is for
seller
me,
just gets a check.
well, for me, it's like I was baffled when I heard that, and they're like, "Come on, you've never seen anybody do that?" I'm like, "We don't have to. We live in a hail market where we get blasted enough.
We
Where
don't
you're
have
good at
to.
your job. You keep business moving, and
Right.
you don't need to go make business for yourself
Mm-hmm.
legally." Um,
Right.
but so try to get back on track. Yeah, I mean, most insurance companies have a different amount of time that they're going to allow you to make a claim from that date of loss. So
Mm-hmm.
if you call me, like, for example, the first real big hailstorm we had this year was May 9th of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
Hit up north, and it was weird. Came in late at night, about 11 p.m. And it just started smoking people, waking people up in the middle of the night, up in like Firestone, Longmont, Frederick, Erie. Got hit
I remember
really.
that. I had a listing up there that day or that during that time frame, and my clients had some damage. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that type of stuff, if you're dealing with a real estate transaction, can make things tough. But
Mm-hmm.
like I said, the insurance industry, with how many claims we have here, we're either number 1 or 2 in the country every year for hail claims. It's like Texas, is smoked all the time, and so are we. Denver, Colorado Springs, this whole front range, Fort Collins.
Yep.
So insurance is going to do what they can to protect themselves, so they're paying less, or
Sure.
they're not paying the full bill. They're going to up your deductible, those types of things. And so other things that they're starting to do is shorten that window of how long you have to be able to make that claim and recover depreciation. So most people,
Which is about how long?
it depends on the company. It used to be like 2 years. And when I got into the industry, I started seeing companies switch and send letters out to their homeowners and say, now you only have 12 months, one year. I just was working with a customer, and their estimate that they got from their insurance company, it was an insurance that they got through Costco, and it said explicitly in their estimate, you have 180 days from the date of loss to complete everything and have it all done, which typically
Not make the claim, but to have the roof done.
Correct.
Permitted, signed off, done.
Absolutely. All the invoices done. Yep. Because how it works with insurance is, let's say your roof's 10 years old, for example. You get hit, you call your insurance. Ideally, you have the contractor that you want to work with meet with your insurance, just to kind of make sure they're catching all the damage on that front end. Because a lot of people don't understand, and their insurance agent might call them and say, hey, call 3 contractors and get 3 estimates. That's not necessary. That's a waste of everybody's time. Your insurance is supposed to write an estimate, and your insurance should be covering like for like everything that you have. Insurance companies, like I said, they're for-profit companies. They want to make money. They want to spend as little in claims as possible. They delay things, they deny things, they defend themselves and try to make it as difficult as possible. And they try to make the contractors look like the bad guy, which sometimes they are. But for the most part, your insurance company is lowballing you and not including everything that they should. Lots of times, so you'll make that claim, the insurance adjuster comes out, they look at the roof, they look at the siding, they look at anything that potentially got damaged by the hail, and they'll write that up and include it in your claim. For example, of insurance being way low ballers. I had a customer this year, she had vinyl siding, whole back side of her house. She was down in Littleton and got absolutely demolished. It's just, looks like Swiss cheese, the back of her house. On their initial estimate, they agreed to replace the whole roof, and they should obviously agree to replace this whole back side of siding. On the initial estimate, they had accounted for 25 square feet of siding, and so then what we do is we build a supplemental estimate. So if they miss anything on the roofing side, gutter side, we add those things in. If they miss things that are required by building codes. We add those things in. So we take insurance's estimate, we build on top of it what's called a supplemental estimate. Once we have everything added into that, we send it back to the insurance adjuster for them to review and approve. And we send all of the, proof that we need. We send the local building codes, we send photos, things like that.
Yep.
And then they, essentially approve those changes, add them into the estimate, and send us an updated estimate.
And I can say from experience, you have actually done this for an active mutual client right now, right? And there's a lot of battling that goes into this, right? Where you're actually going to bat for the homeowner and saying, hey, insurance company, you forgot X, Y, and Z. Here's the photos to prove it. And here's the building code that you need to oblige here. So, I mean, kudos to you for fighting that fight. And that doesn't make any sense for someone to say, oh, well, this roofer said they would do it for cheaper. Well, it's like, what part of that project are they not doing?
Absolutely.
Because material is material and quality work isn't cheap. And if the insurance is paying it anyways, and I think that's a key that a lot of people don't know, is that you can actually have your claim amount bumped up with more discovery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it should be. If you have an insurance company that comes out and gives you an estimate that's fully accurate and has everything that you need in it, never leave that insurance company, because that doesn't happen. Like we have a supplementing team where that's what they do. Mm-hmm. Once we get a job contracted, I'll look through the initial estimate from insurance. I'll look at the local building codes. I'll look at my photos, and I find the things that they missed, and I forward that to my supplementing company. And then they do the same thing. They go through all my photos. They go through all my notes. They go through the initial estimate from insurance. They go through the building codes, and they add in things that I missed, and then once we add all those things in, because at the end of the day, how our contract works on the insurance side is we tell people, hey, you're responsible for your deductible. We're going to go get everything else that we need from insurance, because they have to pay it, unless, maybe you went cheap on your insurance policy and you left certain things out, like building code coverage, what's called law and ordinance. It's required in the state of Colorado that your insurance.
I was going to say, is that even illegal? Yeah. Like
it's required that they have to offer it to you. Most insurance agents who are smart aren't even going to offer it to their people. They're just going to include it in every policy that they write, because at the end of the day, if somebody has to make a claim and they don't have that in there, the building codes are required. So that money is going to have to come from somewhere. And if your insurance isn't covering it, you are. And
we're bookmarking that. We're going to get an insurance expert on here and talk about that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, so like, for example, they miss simple stuff sometimes, and like, but that whole supplementing, like there is now companies out there that exist that's 100% of what they do. They work with.
Is the supplementing?
Absolutely. And so where they don't go chase down sales people. These people are kind of insurance supplementing specialists and then you send your initial insurance estimates, you send photos, whatever they need. And those people work with insurance, do all the supplementing, get all of the stuff approved, and whatever they get approved, they charge a certain, percentage of that they get added to the estimate.
Interesting.
So there's a whole new industry that is created. Wow. And there's businesses that exist because insurance doesn't do their job. Realistically, your insurance should be documenting everything that you have. If you have this on your roof, well, then the insurance has to pay to replace that. Versus, me and the supplementers and that work for us, like we have to find all those things and point them out to insurance. Like lots of times, if I can meet with the adjuster, I can maybe point some of those things out while we're inspecting the roof, while they're originally doing it. And I can tell them, hey, here's some of the local building codes that are required here. So that's going to have to be included in your estimate. So that can help speed things up, but I mean, that customer who I mentioned with the siding, she has whole roof, sidings all demolished. Like she has multiple skylights with holes in them with tarps over them. And sometimes, we can move forward with construction before we get all those supplements approved. But sometimes, we have to really be sure that insurance is going to cover those things if it's a big amount, because like I said, how our contract works is it puts us on the hook for all of that. And it takes all of that responsibility off of the homeowner, and it says, hey, you're responsible for your deductible. We're responsible for holding your insurance's feet to the fire and making sure that they're going to give us
for sure
to build the roof to code.
For sure.
So it's a battle for sure. There's some companies that are better than others and some that are worse than others. But just understanding your insurance, and sometimes, like even me, I work with a lot of insurance agents and they know their industry really well, but they might not necessarily know the claim side all that well. Like people like me, people who work on that side every day, sometimes can be a better resource if you have questions. I love
Sure.
chatting with insurance agents and learning things from them and them learning things from me because they don't do what I do. They don't write claims.
Yeah.
They don't work with adjusters like we do. So
And the landscape is changing, right? As insurance companies are pulling out of Colorado and Florida due to the high payout, rates that they're forced to
yeah.
participate in, and it's just a landscape that we need to consistently stay on top of.
Yeah, and you and I had talked about that in the past. I don't know. I'll have to do some research and figure out, and maybe we can follow up some point. But I've heard from different adjusters, different insurance agents, different real estate agents even have mentioned it to me that since that Marshall fire, there's like talks of the state of Colorado mandating a percentage-based deductible.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that means is, right now you might have a flat deductible. Most people aren't even aware that you typically have two different deductibles. You have one inside your house for anything that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also probably have one for wind and hail, a separate deductible for wind and hail related events. And typically those are higher than your interior deductible. Your interior might be 500 or 1,000, kind of similar to your car.
Sure. Water heater bus, you got a flood, you got to replace the floors. Yeah.
Yep. Versus wind hail deductible is typically higher. 1,500, 2,000 is pretty common lots of times.
Mm-hmm.
But the percentage based one is based on your home's insured value. So if you buy a house for 800,000 here in Denver, you might, if it burns down, it's not going to cost $800,000 to rebuild it, right? Because you already own the property. That's a big part of it.
Right.
Some lenders might make you insure it for that, which doesn't make sense because you're never going to recoup those funds.
Yeah, at least for the loan amount is at least what you're probably going to need to be insured for.
Right. Yeah, which is tough because if your house burns down, you're not recouping, $800,000 ever. Your insurance is going to pay to replace your house, which is going to cost significantly less than that.
Right.
But so say your $800,000 house is insured for $600,000. Well, 1% of 600,000 is 6,000. So now your wind hail deductible, if you have a 1%, is 6,000.
Right. That'll be interesting to see where that goes.
Yeah. So if that's mandated by the state, that's going to be tough because people will be frustrated, but at the same time, they're doing it, in my opinion, to protect us from insurance companies leaving. If insurance companies keep losing money because they're paying out for hail claims all the time, they're just going to eventually say, like, all right, this isn't profitable. We'll just.
And the more players in the game, the more we promote a competitive marketplace to earn business. So if there is only, there's only two companies left, that's bad news for consumers.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, by raising to a percentage-based deductible, now instead of your $1,500, $2,000, well, now, it depends. There's some really expensive houses in this state. I dealt with somebody earlier this year who, it wasn't a state mandated thing, but their deductible through their insurance company it had to be at 1.5% because their house was worth way more than I thought. But their deductible is $11,000, which is tough. Most people don't have that lying around.
Sure.
But their roof was at least probably 30 to 40, so it's like nobody has that lying around, ready to throw at a roof. So 11 is still a lot better. So those are things I always encourage people understand your insurance policy, understand your deductibles, understand whether you have, ordinance and law coverage, certain things. And another big thing, I know we're just kind of shooting tangents all over, but insurance policies, most people don't have a great understanding. There's two main types of policies in terms of what I do that kind of matter. And it's called RCV versus ACV. RCV stands for replacement cost value versus ACV stands for actual cash value. The difference between those two is just going to be depreciation. So every insurance job, they're going to depreciate it. So I mentioned earlier, so say your roof's 10 years old, and you have an RCV policy, replacement cost value. So that means your insurance company is going to cost you what it takes to replace it minus your deductible. So if you have that, say your roof was, $20,000. If it's, I'm going to pull up my calculator. Most shingle roofs depreciate at about 3% per year. So I don't really need the calculator for that. What do we say? 10-year-old roof. So, I mean, you're looking at 30% depreciation.
Okay.
So if your roof is $20,000 and we depreciate it, if it's $20,000 RCV, your first check that you get from insurance is going to be that $20,000 minus your deductible, whatever that is. Say it's $2,000, so you're down to $18,000, then minus depreciation.
Sure.
Then once everything's completed, that depreciation is recoverable. So like I will submit invoices to your insurance company showing, hey, we completed everything. Please release the depreciation to the customer. The customer will get that money and then, pay us the remainder of what they owe.
Understood. Yeah.
If you have an ACV policy, it's the exact same setup. 20,000 minus your deductible, minus the depreciation. The difference is when we complete the work, they don't release that depreciation. It's non-recoverable. So I've dealt with customers who were unaware that they had that type of policy, and that's a really hard conversation. And think that's on a 10-year-old roof. Think if it's 20 plus years old, think how much more that depreciation is going to be.
Ton of depreciation.
So
essentially, if you have a hail-inducing or a damage-inducing hail event, get it done quickly.
Yeah, but it's
also the newer the roof, the less depreciation.
Well, and be aware of your policy and the changes that it may have. Like, because some policies for certain companies, you'll have RCV years 1 through 10. As soon as your roof hits 10 years old, it switches to ACV. You got other insurance companies where 15 years where you have RCV. As soon as you pass 15 years, it's ACV only. So like I've worked with some great agents who might be aware of that and might say, hey, my customer's getting close to that 15-year mark. Can you go take a look at their roof to see if they have anything that's claimable? Right. And typically, they don't, unless there's,
But it's always worth checking.
Absolutely.
And I would bet that 99 people, for sure, I would bet that 99% of people ask that question. Hey, do you have ACV or actual cost or
replacement cost?
Replacement or RCV, which is it? And when does that switch over for you? Most people aren't going to know the answer to that. I need to actually review my own insurance docs to know. I mean, I bought two years and change ago. So it's not that fresh or it's not that old, but still that's something that people should know.
Yeah. For example, I had one in Littleton earlier this year that they were with a company that switched. I can't remember if it was after 15 years or 20 years it switched to ACV, but their roof was 26 years old. So after I did all the math and explained to her, I said, if you make a claim with your depreciation, with your deductible, here's how much you're going to get, right. There's not anything left for them.
Sure.
With
it's just too
the amount that's left over after depreciation is greater than your deductible.
Totally.
So you still are going to owe money. So at that point, you're self-insured, which is crazy. It's like, how much have they been
an out-of-pocket roof?
How much have they been paying for insurance the last 5-10 years? And it's like, if you're self-insured on your roof, your insurance should be pretty cheap. You shouldn't.
And if you have a buyer that's absolutely true. And if you have a buyer who's going to be buying the home and all of a sudden it's discovered that the roof needs to be replaced and the seller is unable to make a claim, that seller is on the hook to replace that roof.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all. And I mean,
or else the buyer's going to accumulate the house with an uninsurable roof, and that's just not going to fly.
And so some people that sounds absolutely wild, but it's like, think about a car. People ask all the time, you and I ran into that on I forget, it was a low slope house that we looked at. And I was telling you this is probably going to need to be replaced, this roof. And you thought, okay, well, insurance is going to.
I remember.
And I said, well, why would insurance replace this? There's not any insurance damage here. And I explained it like an old car. If you drive a car for 25 years and don't ever get in any accidents and it dies on year 26, how much is insurance going to give you for it? Nothing, and
big old goose egg. Yeah.
Right. And so having an RCV policy on an old roof is kind of like gold, because think about that. If you have an old roof that you've had for 20 plus years and you make a claim and your insurance is going to pay replacement costs on that whole thing, that's a lot of, for a car, they're going to depreciate that and only going to pay you what it's worth in its current value. The roof, they're going to pay you what it costs to replace it. Imagine you drive a car for 24 years, you get in an accident and, a new car is $30,000+ and they're like, here you go. Here's 30
Yeah,
grand. Like that would be
totally.
amazing, but that's just
Yeah.
not how it works. And so, I mean, that's part of the reason why when you have good insurance, you pay for it, because
Yeah,
like
for sure.
that's a huge deal and that's a huge
Yeah,
expense to have your insurance company covering for you.
totally. Yeah. Well, thank you for all of that knowledge, man. We're coming up on the 50-minute mark here. So let's leave folks with this. How can folks get in touch with you if they had questions about their own roof?
Yeah. I'll give you my cell. I mean, you can always text, call, email me.
Sure.
I work
Yeah.
for a company out of Arvada. We're called RoofTec Precision Exteriors. Um, you can contact me directly. My cell is
Perfect.
I guess you can maybe post it in the video link or something.
Yeah, I'll put it in the description and wherever we post this for sure.
But yeah, I tell people, I'm my work phone and is my personal phone. So
Yeah.
I'll try to get back to people as quickly as I can. And we're not in our busiest time of year right now. We're still busy.
Hey, even in your busy time, you always respond. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I mean, shoot me a call, shoot me a text, shoot me an email. I've got an Instagram. You'll probably see me tagged in this. I'm not.
What's the handle there? Travis is my roofer.
Travis is my roofer. I think with periods.
There he is.
Between all the words.
Yeah, something like that. Nice. We'll link it all down.
I'm going to be more active on there, especially now that we're slowing down a bit. But yeah, I mean, I'm easy to get a hold of. And I would recommend to people, reach out, have me inspect your roof for free, get to know me, build some trust, and hopefully you don't need me anytime soon. But if you do, it's nice to have that contact.
It's only a matter of time in Colorado.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right on. Travis Schiller, RoofTec, Precision Tech. Hang on. No, RoofTec, Precision Roofing.
RoofTec
Screwed that up, didn't I?
Exteriors.
That one. Travis Schiller. That's all you really need to know.
For the most part. Yeah. Travis Schiller.
Awesome.
You'll find
Travis, thank you so much for your time today, man. Really appreciate the knowledge.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Sweet.
All right,
Talk soon.
Talk to you soon.